From there, I want to actually quickly move to Derek. So it's one of the deep tech companies that you have. So Derek, I want to actually talk about two things. Let's just make it a little more real. Have you seen deep tech adopted in the industrial AI or any of those spaces? And where have you seen that affect the balance sheet positively? Okay, and then that's one part. And since I'm getting lost a little bit myself with so many different panels here, I want to also ask you the very exciting story you talked about submarine. I mean, you don't have to go into the excruciating details, but tell me, how is government adopting some of this? And what does that mean as an opportunity ahead of us?
Sure. So as a young startup trying to take some of these shiny new toys, digital twins, AI into the marketplace, we had a big struggle convincing business buyers that this is real, right? It's not tangible, no, you can't feel it, perceive it. Quickly we realized that unless until we link these outputs to concrete balance sheet outcomes, it's not going to sell. And we're taking a conscious effort to do that. So I'll give you industrial AI companies out of India are truly affecting balance sheet outcomes for manufacturing companies globally, pharmaceutical companies, energy companies. So I'll give you some three concrete examples of this. One is out of Pina. ABB is actually monitoring the energy profiles of assets in Germany. Because as you know, because of the war, there's an energy crisis out there. And there is an immediate need to make sure that some of the industrial assets are not guzzling power beyond the mean. And that whole profiling and recommendations for that is going to happen out of Pina to ABB. The second example is out of Devanagari. So if you look at Devanagari, Shell has set up a plant where they started globally monitoring and optimizing the health of motors. It starts with a simple asset like a motor, and gradually you'll have the complexity. So operations in Kazakhstan, Africa, Saudi Arabia, Abu Dhabi, all of that, any rotary equipment, diagnostics and prognostics will happen out of Devanagari. And then from our own company, out of Jayanagar, Flushara, what we did was, Aramco, the largest profitable company, they came to us with a problem. They said, we have a lot of unplanned downtime, specifically because they have 14 bad actors in their upstream operations. So we're very specific. They said 14 bad actors, can you deploy your toys on that and see if you can bring it down? So folks out of Jayanagar, they were able to do that, and it is shared of $60 million of annual downtime reduction. I mean, no, production is not lost. So these are very concrete examples. There are other interesting companies like Exact Space, Switch On, Atti Motors from Malleshwaram and all of that, doing some game-changing work. And this is not done out of Palo Alto, not San Francisco, not Shanghai, not Dusseldorf, out of Coimbatore, Bangalore, Chennai, and other cities out here. So this is a very exciting space where we think we can be a global leader. And at this point in time, I strongly believe our capability far exceeds our self-belief. We need more startups to be confident and come out in the marketplace.
I think that's so refreshing to hear that. So with that, I want to come to my colleague Rajiv as well. So Rajiv, when I was telling you about this AI opportunity, we both discussed this phrase of consortium of change is what this group itself is. I mean, we have seen, of course, a lot of consortiums, the consortiums of IoT, etc. But I thought there can't be a better stage than this to actually drive the change. And in talking with you, I was talking about, how many different things have to be unlearned at this point in time. And I think a lot of enterprises, the larger the size, the more things to unlearn. I think to that extent, our friends here, Praful, Derek, they all have an advantage. But I just wanted to see when you drive transformative work within Accenture as an industry lead, and also when you're working with clients, where do you see this play out very, very strongly in terms of what needs to have been unlearned?
Yeah. No, I think a good one. When I look at from a change perspective, right, I think fundamentally the change itself is changing. Let's put it that way. I think that's a headline sometime back Forbes and others carried, right? But if you actually peel that and see what exactly is changing over there, right? There are clearly two time phases we are talking about. We are talking about and BC and AD. Now we are talking about before pandemic and in the pandemic. I'm still calling in the pandemic because pandemic represents change, and this change is a continuous change, right? So there are clearly two phases, and hence the unlearning is very important to it. And what does it mean for this change is the element of compression is happening in this change. And when I say compression, there is a time dimension to it. What we have been doing in 36 months, can we do it in 36 weeks? And that sense of urgency is there in all decision points and execution. And during this pandemic, what has happened is a lot of orthodoxies we carried in our mindset and in culture all got disproved that we can do better, right? That's a time dimension to it. The next dimension to it is about the magnitude of change. And that is also coming up in such a way that we can't absorb everything is happening in one time, right? And the best example over there, the CEOs, typically when we interact with them, they are telling, look, I had a gas pedal and a brake to run the business. Today I've been elevated to a cockpit of an aircraft, right? So it's not two-dimensional. You get a lot of data coming up, more than what you can consume. And what Derek was talking about is that how do we enable machines to consume and give you insights and action rather than you personally try to do that, right? So when you look from that perspective, and I don't want to call legacy business, but the large traditional business has to unlearn a lot of things, right? And the most important part about is, what's my market relevance today? Am I catering the right clients, or who is my future client to it? And we all call it as a client and customers in a business parlance. I would like to elevate that conversation in the light of sustainability and many other things, that it's not about customers, it's about citizens. And there are a lot of services every industry can actually offer to the larger ambit of citizens than immediate consumers or customers, right? The next angle is about the technology, and the technology have been plastered to address many of the challenges. And we call it as a conventional pipeline. If you take any industry, be it retail, healthcare, financial services, whatever it is, we have a predefined value chain for it. And that concrete pipelines are getting disintegrated to specific value spots. Look, the example Derek was quoting about, right? And if you are in a large asset management space and you are catering to upstream, downstream business on refineries or energy as an industry, we are actually looking at, there are value spots within that, fine grained value spot, and that's where some of the innovations and disruptions are happening, right? So the technology is going to actually break that. And the industry is all talking about composability. Ganesh is there, is a great champion of the composable thinking over there, right? And this is about that breaking that concrete pipeline and see what is the composition of that and can you bring that. That's a change in technology. The most important part, which I would say that nothing changes if our talent and culture changes. You look at any reference of any leaders in the market, I think the force behind it is the talent and the culture. And that's where the larger change happening. And most importantly, from this group, and I think from a consortium of change, as you called it, right? I think how do we create that talent for the market is important. Very important for us from an India perspective as well. How do we create that rather than consuming the kind of outputs from engineering colleges and many other places? And it's not just about engineering colleges, right? You see design as an important element. You need not be only an engineer to design that part, right? I think a lot of humanized factors are coming into the entire solution to it. So how do we actually elevate ourselves as industry and consortium from consumers of talent to creators of talent? I see these are the waves of changing happening from top to bottom, right from whom do you serve to what technology we will make changes versus what talent and culture we need to make change to meet this ever-changing continuous change.
Very well said. Yeah, I think the consortium of change is a lovely set of things that I want to hang on to. Dr. Rohini, I want to come back to you on yet another exciting area. And in all honesty, actually, I want to get to the details of quantum because we won't do justice to the topics of trends and change without actually getting to the depths of it. In my understanding, there are large, big and hairy problems in the world with most of our computing will be limited to solve, right? So I'm thinking if quantum computing is around the corner and how real it is, and what's Microsoft doing in that space. And on top of it, some of that has to do within the way that we will address big data and take intelligence out of it. Examples that I've heard is anything that's got a very, very huge amount of transitive data, which is collected by mass activities like the sentiments of the people, market sentiments, for example. These are the ones that actually are hugely dependent and almost needing quantum computing right now. So what's Microsoft's perspective? What's your own personal perspective on where do you see that area emerging?
Yeah, so it's a big topic. So let me say, look, quantum is getting a lot of hype, but it is also important to remember where it is today, and therefore what should be the practical line of sight between now to when it becomes a practical real world capability. So first of all, fundamentally, if you understand, quantum is fundamentally the way nature works. Nature at the subatomic level is quantum. What we use as bits in our normal computation technology is really a subset of how quantum works, which is at the basic level a qubit. Now, if we come down to why it works, there are multiple things underneath it in terms of superposition, interference, etc., which is why quantum addresses certain problems which classical computing would take exponential complexity to solve if you would go look at practical size problems. So there are a subset of problems that quantum is useful for. For those subset of problems, for it to reach any real world thing, we are still some time away. So what we are taking as a approach towards that is to say, what can you solve today? There are certain optimization problems that one can solve using quantum inspired algorithms. Those are ones that we are going after today. In preparation for the long term, where quantum at a very large scales are available as computation engines, you have to think of a full stack approach. Because it is not like you're going to take a full problem and give it to a quantum computer. A quantum computer will be like your GPUs are today, like your FPGAs are today, a particular specialized processing unit within your entire software stack. So it is a full stack approach that one has to take to create the capabilities you will need for quantum computing, which requires that you have development kits that Microsoft is working on and others are working on as well, languages that abstract out the quantum algorithms to a level that you can code, and what you prepare today is usable tomorrow. So those are the few overall highlights of what we are doing, but it's a big space, it's an evolving space, both from the physics side to the entire software stack. And I'm personally very, very passionate about following it, just because it is just the physics of it very, very exciting.
Awesome. I mean, it is of course a continuously evolving space as well in that sense. Yeah. So Ganesh, I wanted to talk to you about the next thing. I don't have specifically anybody here from the space expertise particularly, unless of course Nagaranda has a few startups in his pocket to do that. But what I wanted to ask is, from the fascination of space to the business of space, how closer do you see we being around? And I understand the low orbital things and a few other things, but do you see a proliferation of startups, new business models emerge? What exactly is space the canvas for in terms of innovations?
Absolutely. So 5 years down the line, Bangalore's got a clear sky. You look up at the sky and you're probably going to be seeing all those LEO satellites roaming around the sky. There's plenty of satellites. LEO satellites are proliferating the space these days. And the business model for these LEO satellites are essentially location-based services, right? All kinds of location-based services, starting from climate management, starting from digital cartography, agriculture-based services that they want to provide, any other kind of location-based services are all the basic fundamental business models at this point in time. There is a lot of military applications which is already kind of tried and tested, and lots of military organizations are using these satellites for. But yes, that's where the biggest kind of drive really is: digital cartography, location-based services in variety of different industries and sectors. That's where the kind of proliferation and driver really is happening for these Earth intelligence, and we call that as actually as not just space, Earth intelligence, as we want to call it, because the idea here is to basically monitor and map everything that's happening on the ground from the sky with space as a vantage point there. And that's to the point what Kiran was making earlier. Space as a vantage point, building intelligence about Earth, about every nook and corners of the aspects, creates new business models for a variety of companies to provide new services for a variety of industries as well there. Right?
Excellent. Yeah, I mean, the work that we're doing with Titan Space is something that I was close with, and then I think when we do create a fabric or a platform, if you will, where this data can actually get integrated, then it's very likely that we can actually proliferate a lot of startups in that space that consume that data. That I think is a interesting space. So the next question I wanted to have was for Nitin. So, Nitin, the most important thing is I initially had that discussion about an early adoption into the metaverse, etc. But then there is this content governance. It has two angles, at least, for this question's perspective. One, with the metaverse, or even in the way that content gets delivered for me with an AI engine in the back deciding what I get to consume, all right? Is actually baffling, frankly, to see. So what I wanted to know is, in the new world of so much content that is out there and data that is at arm's length that I can access, how do you, in the media industry, see governing that? And, in terms of who gets to see what, how much of it is inadvertent yet very dangerous exposure to content. So I really want to talk about responsible AI perhaps working in the back, which is driving me the sort of content that I need to get, and what's the media's perspective on it.
Sure. Of course, we are all been consuming it, and many a time when we see certain incident, looks like we are a victim of it.
Yeah.
So, as a organization where we are present across media, news, information, and content, there is a conscious effort that how do we create our technology fabric which is not exploitative of the information we capture about our consumers. So far what we have seen across multiple platforms, there is a huge emphasis on now collecting first party data. And all of us have seen in various shapes and form how it get used and many a time misused.
Yeah.
So our conscious effort here is that we avoid collecting first party data, because there are enough and more better ways through your ability of behavior on different platforms which are with us or which are partnered with us through a technology stack which does not allow us to share PII data with anyone. We can surface content which is safe. And safe from multiple aspects. One is what you like to see based on the context of the particular event. We also have an ability through AI to figure out the genuinity of the content, so that we consciously avoid spreading information which is not verified.
Yeah.
There are capabilities which is being built whereby we restrict the number of hours of using content in a kid-safe environment. So if you look at the platforms which are coming up this quarter, you will see there is an option for kid-safe viewing mode. So while you can watch a content in a living room with your family, there are abilities by which the content get automatically modified to a kid-safe viewing option if you're watching it with your family. And otherwise, if whichever way you want to consume the content, you can consume in your personal space. So there is enough work being happening around it. It's a self-governing model. I would say there is no regulatory body who gives an oversight of what should happen, what should not. And being a responsible organization which runs a significant media business, it's our effort that we are putting in to make sure that our content is distributed to the right audience. Secondly, we don't want to make it addictive.
Yeah.
That's a bigger challenge. If people get hooked onto a certain content, they keep watching it for hours. While it's easy to say that you have been watching for long, you stop it. Our effort is to make sure that we create a capability on our platforms by which beyond a certain period of time, if your kid is watching a content, there is enough ability for others to know that you may want the kid to get off the platform.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, there are a lot of initiatives happening. I
Yeah.
would say nascent days. It requires a great amount of collaboration from other colleagues in the industry
Yeah.
to come together and keep it truly self-governing and independent media environment. Getting regulatory oversight onto it will not be a great outcome for
Yeah.
any one
Yeah.
of us.
Yeah, I think it's the tools that we need to be having access to,
Yeah.
which sort of tells me what is it that I personally make a choice on.
Correct.
Yeah.
And most importantly, avoid exploiting personal information data
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
that's not how the future of
Absolutely.
privacy would go for.
Brilliant, brilliant. I just want to check with the audience if there is anybody who has exciting, pressing questions. I mean, very rarely do you get all of these people on the stage. But then, of course, we will be holding you back between the lunch and our exciting session on the science of building a culture of innovation itself. So, Pravish or somebody, if you can help with the mics there, a couple of questions we can take from the audience as well. Yeah, well, you're asking the question if you can address it to who it is to. It'll be easier.
Very good afternoon to the panel. It's anybody can answer. Just my question is, what will be the future of facial recognition technology, which now introduced in the airport as a substitute to boarding pass? Will it be implemented to all other sectors, and what are the challenges, any threat on those things? Anybody from the panel? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. Which one of you want to take? It's a guess. I think Chetan, do you want to answer that in terms of facial recognition? We were talking earlier about event-based capabilities.
I didn't
Yeah.
quite understand the question. You're saying facial recognition. What is the future of that, or
Future.
So in terms
Now,
of,
it is introduced in some of the airport, including Bangalore, as a substitute to boarding pass. So will it be implemented to all other sectors going forward?
So I think
that
this is
in
quite
future?
mature
Yeah, thank you.
technology now. If you ask me, facial recognition is a very common. I mean, there are AI tools, and almost all the companies uses that. So I don't think it's a kind of it's still unknown in terms of solving that problem. But now the question is how optimally you can solve now. That's the next question. Probably now facial recognition might be required. You have an image sensor, and then you have processors, and probably the whole pipeline might add up a lot of latency, right? And probably you'll not be able to get in a short span of time. So can you do that really quickly, like we do as a human, right? In a lowest power, whatever you can achieve, or in terms of lowest performance you can achieve. So I think now the next question is how optimally you can do that. And that's what this tiny ML and edge computing would come into picture, because right now if you do the facial recognition, currently they send the data to the cloud or maybe the host processor where everyone has an access, and this is like a private information. Can you do it locally and just send the metadata? So that's a kind of next thing which people are looking for that. That's
So,
my-
Dr. Rohini, you want to weigh in?
Yeah, let me just add, I think it's a great question. I think, so as you may have followed, Niti Aayog had put out last year 2 documents to both give the principles as well as operationalization of responsible AI. There is work happening on facial recognition. I think facial recognition, particularly in the understanding the technology itself, is not 100% accurate. You have to understand that at the underneath level, it's giving a probability, right? That's what AI does. Now, it's a big privacy issue. So I think, in my view, as a country, we will have to move in a direction where we have very clear boundaries for what facial recognition is okay to use for, where, and with consent, etc. Those things the country has to move forward. As an organization, Microsoft actually has been lobbying in the US to say that facial recognition has to be really clearly demarcated, clear boundary conditions are needed.
My first question is towards Chetan. Thanks for giving that perspective on neuromorphic computing. Where do you see neuromorphic computing with respect to the current computing ecosystem? And where do you see that thin line getting into a quantum computing kind of environment? Number one. Followed by, I have two questions for Ganesh. Thanks for giving that semiconductor perspective of satellites, and the quantum computing is catching up, and we know a few cloud providers have already come out with managed services of it. Where do you see this being adopted by chip vendors? So until it is in the chip and SDKs towards it, it's not going to reach the developers and it's not going to be democratized. So what's your view on that? And a follow-up question would be, once that is a reality, where do you see the sustainability factors coming in or initiatives taken by semiconductor companies where they will abstract or obsolete current computing chipsets and move to quantum computing, creating e-wastes? Finally, for Praful, thanks for that questions on Web 3.0. So you talk about properties having digital rights. Thanks for that. And we see the future and look forward to create a lot of avatars. Digital rights management in media industry is already being there, and there's a framework, though there is piracy in that. And if you have stringent, this is my view question, if you have stringent kind of rules for this digital rights, where would the open source community lead into, and how will that facilitate startups? Thank you.
So,
We will have to do a rapid fire answering of this. I want to get Dr. Rishikesh here on the stage as well. So let's do a quick round. The rest we'll save for lunch.
so for neuromorphic computing, as I said, right, so it's a brain-inspired computing, and if you and brain is a perfect example to take the inspiration. So if you go there, what brain is good at? It's not good in multiplying two big numbers, right? But it is good at in cognitive tasks or perceptual tasks, and that's what we are trying to build here. So it's not replacing your conventional computing. It's just augmenting that with and at the same time achieving the same level of power, performance, and area matrix. So that's the main goal over there in neuromorphic computing. That's the short answer I would give.
Excellent. So the other question was for you.
All right, so let me go then. So quantum computing is 20 years out. Quantum processors are going to be 20 years out. We are not going to be making a quantum processor. Intel is not going to be making a quantum processor. Qualcomm is not going to be making a quantum processor anytime in the next 10, 15 years. What is probably going to be coming in the next 6 to 7 years and probably 10 years is what we call as all optical processors or photonic processors, which deviate from the traditional silicon electron-based computing to light-based computing. Those processors, test prototypes are already available with different companies there. We will be seeing photonic processors coming into the market by 2030, 2032 timeframe. We will have photonic computing coming in, and that influencing hyperscale and data center infrastructure much more than quantum processing, which is still further out, 7 to 8, 10 years down the line. I completely forgot the second part of the question.
It had to do with sustainability, right? Yeah.
Oh, the sustainability angle, of course. It's slightly related to the neuromorphic computing part as well there. And of course, all the specialized processors that are being designed for various different kinds of workloads that we see, AI workloads and GPUs and so many different kinds of processors. And the next generation processors, which are essentially the 2 nanometer and sub 1 nanometer processors that we are talking about, even then, they have a TDP, the total design power capability of 1000 watts plus. In that kind of a 1000 watt plus power consumption criteria, there's going to be a huge challenge for the semiconductor industry to manage the amount of energy consumption that they are going to be influencing in these hyperscale and data center infrastructure. And it is here where we will have new architectures coming in. There's going to be a lot of influence coming in from the neuromorphic computing perspective there, because there is a substantial amount of energy saving perspective that comes from in there. And very recently, just I think about 2-3 days back, I read an article which is talking about a new compute in-memory architecture which influences neuromorphic computing called NEURRAM. It's spelled NEURRRAM. So it's using RRAM to design and develop the neuromorphic processor there. And that has a 20x energy saving, power consumption saving kind of capability there. So there are advancements definitely happening, but at the same time, the demand for these high compute, high capability, high performance processors outstrip the ability to kind of manage power consumption perspective there. Sustainability will continue to be a challenge for the semiconductor industry. They may be able to handle it from the manufacturing and production perspective, but the processors per se will still be power guzzlers for the times to come.
Awesome. So, Chetan, do you want to just add
Yeah, so I
whatever?
would like to add one comment into the quantum technology side, right? So people were talking about here more on the quantum computing side, right? But there are multiple verticals in quantum technology. One vertical is the quantum computing, which I think everyone is agreed that it will take some time. Even in Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, we are building quantum computer, and we have a nice setup over there with 4-qubit system, with dilution fields and everything. But here, there is a already products out in terms of different vertical. For example, there is a magnetometer or atomic clock, right, which is based on this quantum technology. And there is also QKD system, right, which is used in communication. And China has already shown that, right, to how you can show the quantum key distribution over, from China to the satellite, right? So those are things already there. It's not like it will take time. So there are multiple verticals, but quantum computer will take time. But other parts is already out there, and there is a big push from the government. In fact, they announced almost 8,000 crore in the parliament in this technology. So things are coming out. Yeah.
Thank you, Chetan. So,
Kiran, is there scope
yes.
to take one
Yeah.
last here?
One last question.
Yes, and I'll keep it really brief. I'm part of a public policy think tank called Takshashila, and we work on these things. So my question to Nitin specifically is, the creators economy is quite decentralized, and I think it's empowering. But the concern that I see is how the algorithm will play up if people are consuming and nudge towards content which appeals to them, and it keeps showing things that are very similar to the content an individual is consuming. Just to get a different perspective, I feel content should be such that people also see other perspectives.
Yeah, so currently the way content, I would say the algorithms are designed is to show what you like to see. The efforts are on whereby we don't keep your historical consumption data of content as a method of exploiting your future consumption of content. Yeah. It's a fine balance between self-governance and making money. So wherever the scale will tilt, and it's a conscious effort being made that how can you show other perspective of the same, I would say, opinion or a story. You will see some of it coming up in next, I would say, 8 to 10 months, where the effort is that, like, you will be able to see for a particular story a full lifetime history of who said what and when, so that it will enable you to have your own opinion rather than somebody else's opinion dictating your beliefs and behavior. I would say it's a conscious effort being made specifically for news and information, not so much on entertainment. It's more for fun and entertainment, but media for a news, you will see that change coming on, I would say, in another 8 to 9 months. And of course, consumers have to decide whether they like that perspective or not. And their consumption will define whether the rest of the industry adopt that method or not.
Sorry, I'll just add one last. I think you have a very important question, because at the end of the day, we live in information bubbles otherwise. We have a problem that we are consuming a type of a point of view, especially in the news area, that there is a very interesting website, I'm forgetting the name, that has actually a dial that allows you to see the other side of, let's say, of a point of view, that your news feed becomes a mix to the extent you want based on what you have been seeing versus other things also shown in. So people are trying experiments there.
Just want to add one line there. So the answer to your question probably lies in the proliferation of generative AI. You may want to kind of go and explore what generative AI is, but generative AI is going to be solving or at least being used to solve a lot of the problems or issues that you just talked about. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, I mean, we can go endlessly on this. It's very, very exciting, but I just want to make sure Dr. Rishikesh here gets his time, because, so it's all yours, sir. And then after that, we'll stick around. If some of you can just stay for the curiosity of the audiences. We can answer some questions on the lunch. Yeah. Thank you so much.